Australia is one of the toughest markets in the world for global brands. From coffee giants to fashion empires and fast food chains, companies that dominate overseas often discover that success down under is anything but guaranteed. In this video, we'll look at 8 iconic global brands that tried to conquer Australia and failed spectacularly. Dunkin Donuts. When Dunkin Donuts arrived in Australia in the early 1980s, the company assumed its recipe for success would travel as easily as its donuts. In the United States, the brand was a powerhouse, fueling commuters with coffee and filling countless boxes with sugary treats. But in Australia, the excitement never materialised. Stores opened, customers trickled in, and just as quickly, they moved on. By the late 2000s, nearly every Dunkin Donuts outlet had closed its doors, leaving little trace behind. Even a brief attempt at a comeback in 2014 failed to spark real interest. One major miscalculation was cultural. Australia's deep-rooted cafe scene simply didn't align with the fast service, mass-market model Dunkin represented. Combined with higher prices driven by a smaller market, the brand found itself out of step and out of time. For Australians, Dunkin Donuts was never more than a fleeting guest on their high streets. Topshop. Few fashion names carried the same buzz as Topshop in its prime. In London, the brand was a high street icon, the go-to label for trend-conscious shoppers. When it arrived in Australia in 2011, expectations were sky-high. Flagship stores in Sydney and Melbourne promised the same fast fashion energy that had defined the brand overseas. But almost immediately, cracks began to show. Prices were significantly higher than in the UK, leaving Australian shoppers frustrated. While fashion fans abroad grabbed affordable pieces, locals turned instead to online competitors. Stock issues added to the problem, with popular items often missing in standard sizes. Behind the scenes, steep franchise fees charged by Topshop UK kept costs elevated, sales faltered, debts piled up, and by 2017 the brand's Australian arm entered voluntary administration. One Sydney store lingered on, but when COVID struck in 2020, Topshop's chapter in Australia finally closed. Carl's Jr. In 2016, Carl's Jr. stormed into Australia with big ambitions. The American burger giant announced bold plans for hundreds of stores, aiming to challenge both global heavyweights and local favourites. For a while, the arrival felt like a statement, another major US chain planting its flag down under. But the optimism faded quickly. High operating costs, logistical hurdles, and a marketing push that never connected with locals slowed growth. By 2024, most of the restaurants had shut down, leaving its 300-store dream little more than a memory. Experts point to multiple missteps. Carl's Jr. found itself squeezed between cheaper rivals like McDonald's and Hungry Jack's, and premium newcomers such as Betty's Burgers. Without a clear niche, the brand was exposed to every shift in customer spending. In the end, Carl's Jr. entered a crowded market with little to truly set it apart. And the cracks spread faster than the chain could patch them. Starbucks. When Starbucks entered Australia in 2000, it arrived with confidence. Armed with caramel macchiatos, frappuccinos, and the global reputation of being the world's coffee titan, the company expected another easy victory. After all, it had conquered markets from the United States to Japan with little resistance. But Australia told a different story. The brand badly misread the local cafe culture, one built on espresso drinks, independent roasters, and a deep sense of coffee pride. By 2008, Starbucks had racked up losses of more than $143 million, forcing the closure of 61 out of 84 stores. The retreat was one of the most high-profile failures in the country's retail history. Today, Starbucks remains in Australia, but only as a faint echo of its global self. While it thrives with thousands of outlets in places like South Korea and the UK, in Australia, its presence feels more like a quiet footnote than a headline act. Denny's. For decades, Denny's was synonymous with late-night pancakes, bottomless coffee, and the unmistakable glow of an all-American diner. In the 1980s, the chain tried to bring that formula to Australia, hoping the 24-hour service and comfort food would find a new audience. But cracks appeared almost immediately. Australia already had a thriving cafe culture, one that didn't necessarily match the idea of diner meals at all hours. While Australians loved a big breakfast, many weren't looking for bottomless refills or American-style portions late at night. Finances only made things harder. High labour costs made the 24-hour model expensive to run, and importing ingredients for signature US dishes added even more strain. By 1990, the brand had dwindled to a handful of locations before closing quietly. Denny's didn't just misread the market. It discovered that Australia's appetite for cafe culture was already spoken for, leaving no room for a slice of Americana. Kaufland. When Kaufland announced its arrival in Australia in 2017, the news sent ripples through the grocery sector. Backed by the powerful Schwarz Group, owner of Aldi's European rival Lidl, the German hypermarket giant promised to shake up a $100 billion industry. With $500 million invested in store sites and a massive distribution centre in Melbourne, expectations were sky high. But the story never really began. By 2020, Kaufland abruptly pulled out of Australia without opening a single store. Behind the scenes, the hurdles had been mounting: high startup costs, difficulty securing reliable fresh food supply chains, and the slow timeline needed to achieve national scale. At the same time, Schwarz Group was grappling with falling revenue in Europe and Lidl's struggles in the United States. Australia, once seen as a bold frontier, became expendable. Kaufland's exit remains one of the most unusual, a retail giant that left before locals had a chance to step inside. Sizzler, once a staple of family dining in Australia, is closing its doors for good. Known for unlimited soft-serve ice cream, red-glazed cups of Pepsi, and cheesy toasted bread, the chain carried a sense of nostalgia for generations of diners. But the writing had been on the wall for years. Since 2015, Collins Foods, Sizzler's parent company, had been reviewing the performance of its remaining restaurants. Profitable locations were few, and the once beloved chain no longer fit into the company's strategic growth plans. By the end of 2020, all 9 remaining stores, 5 in Queensland alone, were set to close, leaving 600 employees without work. For many Australians, Sizzler's exit marks the end of an era, a time when casual family dinners came with endless ice cream and warm, cheesy bread. While the memories linger, the chain's decline illustrates how even cherished brands can fade when tastes change and business realities bite. Debenhams, the iconic British department store with a history stretching back over 240 years, arrived in Australia with big dreams. The plan was bold: 10 stores across the country, offering fashion, beauty and homewares to Australian shoppers. But reality quickly caught up. The chain opened just 1 store on Collins Street in Melbourne and never expanded beyond it. While the name carried weight in the UK, Australians already had a crowded department store landscape, with Myer and David Jones firmly entrenched. Debenhams struggled to stand out, and foot traffic simply wasn't enough to justify further investment. By the late 2010s, the store quietly shut its doors, leaving behind little impact. Today, Debenhams exists in Australia only as an online presence. For a brand with centuries of legacy, its Australian adventure was fleeting. A reminder that history alone doesn't guarantee success in a fiercely competitive market. These failures remind us that even the biggest global names can stumble when they misread a market. Australia has proven time and again that success here takes more than just a famous logo. It takes true understanding. Which of these brands surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of Australian nostalgia and the brands that tried and failed down under.